book that I have that gives he and his commanding officer credit for the first two people.
He made the-
Germany.
Wow.
This is my
Good morning.
picture. And so
Welcome to the 2025
Let's start that.
chapter meeting
Second.
here. Today we have a presentation by Ms. Paula Bird. It's on machine guarding. I hope you enjoy it.
Right. Still good morning, right? Okay. Please forgive me, but for some reason I woke up with this little nagging cough. So I don't think I'm contagious. I think it's just what it is. It's January 25, the longest month of the year, right? I've been doing this presentation at the Governor's Conference and a couple other little conferences over the past few years. I just updated this one for you guys. Some of the things my goal here is, how many of you have ever looked at guarding in your industries? Have you looked at the condition of the guarding? What does it look like? Is it something proud, something you could take a picture of and put it on the main page of your website? Or would you hide it from visitors? Right? Okay. So what I have noticed over, how many years did we say that was this morning? A few decades, don't say exactly how long, but it's been a few decades. I have noticed that when it comes to guarding our equipment, first of all, we're not doing a very good job. Anybody want to guess why we're not doing a very good job of that? How about lack of education, right? What do we tell operations, or what do we tell maintenance? Hey, that's not guarded right, or it's not guarded at all. Go fix it, right? Did we give them any ammunition, any tools, any resources to do that? Probably not. And so we see what they put out there and we question it. Well, that doesn't look right. Have you ever looked at guarding and go, that just doesn't look right? You don't know why, but you just look at it and go, something's wrong. Well, that's my experiences over all these decades of me being in industry. I've noticed that we are not giving the attention that our guarding is needing. And so I wanted to give us a resource, a tool to help us out. And so that's where this presentation came from. I have two objectives. I want us to have a methodical process in reducing those guarding risks. There's a reason why we say, hey, maintenance, go get this guarded or guard it better, right? But what are we doing? We're just like throwing money, time, and effort at the problem and crossing our fingers and hoping we get it right. That's not how we should do it. We need a methodical process, which leads to my second objective, a documented risk assessment. How about that? Let us look at guarding like we look at any other risk out there. Give it a methodical process, a documented piece of paper that says we've evaluated this. We assigned it a risk level. And guess what? Based off of that risk level, it's going to help us determine how to properly guard it. With a big O knocking on wood, right? Okay, so I've divided this presentation up into these three categories. We'll jump right in there. How many of you have not ever heard of the OSHA Top 10? Right? Where does the OSHA Top 10 come from? They're looking at all standards. They're looking at construction standards. They're looking at general industry, agricultural, and maritime. We just don't really see a whole lot of agricultural and maritime because the numbers aren't enough to get in the top 10. Okay, and if you look at the references on these, they're looking at it as an overall standard. Okay, so for example, by the way, where's machine guarding on the top 10? Number 10. So as an example, what is the reference for machine guarding? 212. So any citation given over that last fiscal year that started with a 212 gets looped into this category, okay? So you got to understand when they give you a top 10, what are they really telling you? Now let's talk about why it's number 10. How long has it been number 10? Anybody looking at the top 10 like a nerd that I am? If y'all don't know that, I'm a nerd. Self-proclaimed regulation nerd. I've been looking at the OSHA top 10 for at least 10 years. Okay? Correct me if I'm wrong. Machine guarding happens to be number 10. Okay? Fall protection is usually number 1. I haven't seen it not be number 1. HAZCOM is usually number 2. We had an anomaly a few years because of COVID, but it came back to its rightful place of number 2. And so because machine guarding is usually number 10, how do we look at that? How do we look at the risk of machine guarding? That's right. So I want to show you the next slide. The next slide is where OSHA said, well, let's just look at it on a general industry basis. And instead of looking at it per standard, they are looking at it per citation, per reference citation. Okay? Now, for just general industry, the number 1 cited referenced is what? Machine guarding. It went from number 10 when you threw all of the regulations in there and you looked at it as a general standard, but you divide it and take it away and put it just in general industry per citation reference, bam, number 1. Now where's our priority? Did that just change? Did that shift in anybody's noggin? It should. Something else happened this year that hasn't happened ever in the last decade that I've been looking at it, is there was another machine guarding one that popped up. So that's kind of new. Now again, you look at the numbers of the actual citations given. I do want to point something out. When do you suppose machine guarding and just general industry made it to the number 1 slot? Any guesses? 2021. Okay, so before that, HAZCOM was the reigning queen. But starting in 21, machine guarding, and ever since the fiscal year of 21, it's been the number 1 citation. The other thing I noticed is that I am seeing a downward trend. So it used to be like in the 1500s of citations every year. And so we are making some progress, but there's more progress that can be made. Now, the other thing that OSHA does is they don't just look at the top 10 for general industry, but they go back and look at the subparts and give a top 5 for every subpart. And so here's the subpart top 5 for machine guarding. There again, you see the type of guarding method, you see the point of operations and the others. These are generally always in the top 5. An anomaly year here or there, but generally they're there. Why do you suppose 1910 212 A1 makes it to the number 1 slot in general industry? Anybody know or want to guess? Okay, that's a good guess. Do I have any fans of the way that the machine guarding standard is wrote? Anybody? Any other regulation nerds in the room? It's my least favorite. Okay, and I'm going to show you why. Now, don't get me wrong, there's still lots of good material, lots of good meat to this standard, but I'm telling you today, we need an update to this subpart. Anybody have robotics in your industry? Anybody? You going to find robotics in the OSHA standard? No, you're not. Isn't there? They haven't updated the standard. They've made a tweak here and a tweak there, but they have not updated it. But I got good news for you coming up, such as your resources. The first resource you have are the OSHA standards. Here they are. So I asked the question, why is 212A1 the number 1 citation in general industry? Here's my opinion. You know how vague 1910 212A1 is? What does it say? you need guarding. As a matter of fact, if I have a client that gets that citation and I want to go to the informal conference and argue with OSHA, I can't look at that and say, well, did they have guarding and it just wasn't sufficient, or did they not have guarding at all? I couldn't tell you, because 212A1 is so vague. You need guarding. That's it. Okay? So here's what OSHA does give us. There is some alluding to some modern requirements around mechanical power presses. That's about as close as it comes. Okay? You need more resources. Anybody agree? Let me give you some. Before I go into that, what is the main goal of guarding? Prevent contact. That's my rule of thumb right there. Your guarding must prevent contact. How you prevent contact? Wide open. There is a dime a dozen different ways to prevent contact, but it must do that. And so we like this little acronym, OUTA. What does OUTA stand for? The O? Over. Your employees must not be able to go over the guard to access what? That point of operation. Well, that's where people are going to get hurt. So that guarding shouldn't be designed and maintained in a way that people can go over the guard and reach it. The next one, there's your over. Under. Anybody going to go under a guard? I've seen it time and time again. I can't count the number of stories I could tell you where somebody's almost lost an arm, a whole arm, because they're going up under, bypassing a guard. But right off the bat, if they can do that, was it guarded sufficiently? No, because it didn't prevent contact. And people don't get that. Through the guard. Well, how do you go through a guard? I'm going to show you a couple of examples in this presentation alone, okay? And then around. Oh, my arrow didn't show up there, but around. Because that's another thing that we are not getting right, is if that guard is supposed to prevent contact, people forget that you can go behind the equipment, behind the machinery, and maybe even accidentally find yourself in a risky area, okay? So we like that acronym OUTA. That was our goal. Here's our reality. 2 different pictures for you. These are not pictures off the internet. I want to say interstate. Okay? These are pictures I took. Common, very common pictures. I could probably go anywhere and find a picture like that, because I go in the corners and in the dark places and the spidery, nasty places that people don't like to go, and everything else will look good, but I'll find something like that. Prevent contact. Is that preventing contact? You're talking about going through. How about that one over there where they literally cut the guard? Anybody want to know why? Any guesses on why they would actually cut a guard? Oil the chain? Vibration analysis? They didn't want to take the guard off to fix it, so they took the shortcut. Believe it or not, that happens. Okay? What about this other one? This really big, blocked, expandable metal cover that they've made. How many issues, how many risks are associated with that guard alone? Well, what 212 does tell us is, number 1, does it prevent contact? Number 2, is it fixed or secured? Now, if you're looking at that one right here, it kind of looks fixed and secured, except something bumped it, and where they tack welded that expandable metal edge to that angle iron leg, it's off. It's no longer secured. And then does not create a new hazard. How many new hazards do we have here? How do y'all like the way they put that expandable metal on the outside of the angle iron instead of the inside? So every little cut is what? A new hazard. By the way, you know, yours truly talked to them. I talked to this client. I said, take me to the guy making the guards. And we had a nice little discussion about all you need to do is place that expandable metal on the inside. Do you think that made a difference? No? I wish I could say, yeah. It didn't. They have a culture issue there. All right. 212A32 was the number 2 machine guarding citation. Again, it's 2 is vague, but what this one does is actually talk about that point of operation. But here's where OSHA gives us a helping hand. And I highlighted it for you. This says, in the absence of applicable specific standards, what does that mean? If what they have provided us is not good enough, then we can use other standards to help out. Now, first of all, I do want to give some due notice for OSHA providing this publication right here. This publication actually provides a whole lot more information than the OSHA standards are providing. So it's a really good resource for a lot of companies. And they actually break down the different type of guarding, and I don't want to spend time on that here, okay? The ANSI standards is going to be another excellent resource for you, and I'm actually going to talk about 2 of these very particular ANSI standards for the risk assessment and then determining the proper guarding needs, okay? Now, there's a reason I have my little cartoon figure up there. I don't expect you to read all that. First thing I want to say is if you're in a certain industry, go find your ANSI standards for your industry. It's going to be a whole lot more help than anything else you'll have out there, okay? Now, the other, I consider even better resources for us are the ISO standards. How many of you have ever heard of an ISO machine guarding standard? No? Then this is going to be your new best friend. So in the ANSI standard that gives us, hey, if I want to use location and distance as a guarding method to prevent contact, how close can I put that barrier to the actual risk to the point of operation? You know how many people are like, that looks like a good spot right there. How methodical was that? It wasn't. The ANSI standard is actually following the ISO 14120 standard, where they actually says, here is the point of operation based on how high you want the barrier or how far away, here's your other parameters. They tell you with numerical values where to place the barrier. Cool, right? Took the guesswork out. How many people are taking this information to the maintenance department and say, here's your information, here's your resources. Now create a barrier, now create a guard. These others, the 13857, let's say that you actually have to have a slot into a guard for material, raw material, maybe to come in and out or a finished product. Can you just have that as wide as you want? No, that standard right there will tell you, based on your data, how wide and how long that gap can be. It takes the guesswork out, but nobody's talking about that. Nobody's giving that resources to the people that need to have it. Okay, so I love the ISO standards in case you couldn't tell. Okay, but let's go back to these 2 ANSI standards. By the way, I have to tell you, as I was updating this presentation for you, they've updated these ANSI standards. Anybody look at the price of the ANSI standards lately? I'm the only nerd doing that. $350 for just one. Did I update this to the new standard? It was not in my budget for this month. Sorry. Okay, but I will explain those updates as we go along. So the first thing I got to tell you is this B11TR3 is the risk assessment document for machine guarding. They don't have an update for that one. They now call it a historical document. Makes me feel old. Okay, but they didn't get rid of it because it's really good information. There's just no way to make it any better, and so they're using that information in the other standards, but it is still very valid. And so we're going to use that for our actual risk assessment. And then the B1119, if there is not an ANSI standard for your industry, go to this one. This is the general machine guarding criteria, okay? And they actually have renamed it Safeguarding and Machinery Risk Reduction, okay? So I am really excited about it. I want to find the money in my budget to purchase this standard and see how great they updated it. Not there yet, but I am excited about it. So anybody ever done a risk assessment before? Yes, you have, right? It's not any different than what you've been doing before, except for now we're using it for machine guarding, okay? And then based on our risk level from the assessment, we're going to go to this document or a different ANSI document based on your industry, and it will help you, or help maintenance if you're making your guarding, determine the proper type, the proper distance, the proper, anybody using light curtains? Do you know that there's an engineering calculation involved in putting up a light curtain? You can't just slap that up and it be done? Did you know that? Did you know that a light curtain is supposed to, if you break the beam, be able to stop the equipment before you can get to the point of operation? And how many light curtains do you see that's right there, right in front? Bingo. Okay, but it's not the folks putting those light curtains up's fault. We are not doing our job to educate them, to give them the resources that they need, okay? So the risk assessment, typical risk assessment, severity of harm versus probability. This is found in the TR3. This is the exact information given in the TR3. How many times have I told you I'm a nerd? I would prefer numbers, okay? Because instead of saying, well, this is a high risk or a medium risk or whatever, now we have a numerical value associated with that high risk or whatever level risk it is. And one of the reasons we want to do the assessments is to help us develop priorities. Have you ever had a machine guarding audit done? I've got clients that had an audit done for just machine guarding, and they get an audit report with 200, as an example, machining guard hazards. Where do they start, right? They're overwhelmed. Well, this assessment process will help give them a priority. I just like to take it up a notch and assign numerical values to it, okay? Because you might have two that's a very high risk, so which one are you going to take? Well, if you have a numerical value associated with it, it makes it clearer. All right, oh, the other thing I want to say is on this one right here, this is an example. You can change those categories to whatever makes sense for you and your business. And I like to use data. So if we say the severity of harm is catastrophic, what would be a good example of catastrophic? Death, right? So, you know, they've done a decent job of defining that, but I think we can take it up another notch and make it a little bit better. What about probability of occurrences? In your business, in your company, have you ever had a near miss with that guarding, right? That would help you say, well, remote, we don't even have a near miss report of that. Or maybe we've actually had, and you got to be consistent. Give this a time frame in the last 5 years or in the last 10 years, and you want to be consistent around all of these assessments that you're doing. I'm a big consistency person. So there's lots of different ways that you can assign value and use your own company history to make this more applicable to what you're doing. Here's the typical matrix that comes out of that. And again, this is straight from the TR3. So this is why I like numerical numbers. You'll get that data out of there and it'll make a little bit more sense. Anybody see the negligible risk level over in the corner? What do y'all think about negligible risk levels? We also call them tolerable. We accept a certain amount of risk at work. We accept a certain amount of risk just to get here to this meeting today, right? Anybody drive a car, vehicle? A lot of risk was assumed. We call that tolerable. So you're not going to go out into the industry, into your workplace, and have everybody work in a bubble. That's not going to happen. There is a certain amount of risk. And so you've got to define what you consider that tolerable risk. Okay? Now, this is going back to the ANSI B19 that they've updated. I hope that they have clarified this one up and made it a little bit clearer, but this is how they're defining the type of guarding based on the risk level. And if you just look at this slide and your eyes are glazing over, you're going to miss some key words. So if you have a high level, you see a barrier guard, but you also see that with a high medium, which is not in the risk matrix, by the way. Did y'all notice that? Another barrier guard or protective device. So it looks like, well, Paula, it looks like the same thing regardless of the risk level. Well, not really, because I had to put something on the slide that you could see. But if you go down into the weeds, they actually define that for you. For example, if we look at those barrier guards, highest would prevent intentional, while medium would prevent inadvertent exposures. Okay? And then they will give examples of the different type of guardings to use. Does that make sense? I figured it was. So let's do a real quick example, and then we can get straight to lunch, because I know I'm blocking you from that. And I have no idea what time it is. Okay? So anybody know what this piece of equipment is? This is a spool. So just like a sewing machine thread spool, except for this is large electrical cable. This is a real live incident. This incident happened about 10 years ago with one of my clients, or ex-clients. That's a long story. They were taking cable from one spool to another spool because a customer needed a certain length of cable, okay? So they were respooling. And what happened is this company had no safety culture at all, no safety representation. They just had nothing. And they actually had a fatality with a gentleman that is respooling from one spool to another. Well, what do you think if they do a risk assessment now? What is their catastrophic definition going to be? What is their probability going to be? Yeah, you have historical data that says it can happen, it did happen, and it resulted in death, okay? By the way, do you see any guarding on this at all? So after the fact, before I ever got involved with them, what was their solution to guarding this? A typical handrail, 42 inches high with a 21-inch high mid-rail post, a typical handrail around the front and around the sides. What's that acronym I just told y'all about? ALDA. Can some employee go over that handrail? Could they go under the handrail? Could they go through the handrail? Could they go around the handrail? I accidentally found myself around the handrail because as a new person unfamiliar with the territory and you're walking around and you go, holy crap, I'm right behind that. You should imagine the conversation I had with management about how they needed to guard the back of it. Oh, nobody should be back there. Yours truly accidentally found herself there. It happens, okay? So keep in mind ALDA. So over, under, around, and through. Here is the assessment that we did, okay? So again, just going to remind you, there is the, and by the way, how large is this? Can you see the controls right there? So that kind of gives you a huge spooling process. So we did 2 different activities. I'm going to focus on this first one, which is the respooling setup. This is the one in which that gentleman was killed about a decade ago, okay? So we came through here, we said, well, what is the mode? It was operations. You could have maintenance, you could have quality controls, you could have whatever, but it's in the mode of operation. The task is we're respooling, setting it up. What is the hazard? Called in. Does that give you an idea how that gentleman died? And then, what is the failure mode? He got in the hazard zone. So the severity and problem, let me catch up with all my little marks here. Why Was it catastrophic? We had somebody die, right? And likely it actually happened. So you get the two highest levels. Where does that meet? Right there. So there's no doubt that this is a very high risk level. See how this can actually help you talk with operations and talk with the maintenance groups, talk with leadership, and give them this methodical process that is documented, where it's not just your opinion that this is a high risk. You've got the data now giving them that information. Okay? And so because it's a high risk, I go to the ANSI standards or the ISO standards. I apply the applicable safeguarding methods or guards, and then I can go back and do this whole process again. I have this little red box pop up because I wanted to show you how more definitive those definitions are. So in this barrier, it is designed to prevent intentional exposure, and it must use control systems designs in the interlock. Well, what does that mean? How many of us are awesome PLC or electrical gurus in here? And we can talk about control system designs. No, I might be able to keep contact with about half of what somebody's talking to me about, okay? So I needed something to kind of help me. And so what a control system for this risk level has redundancy. What does that mean? If one of those control systems fails, I still have another control system that's going to kick in and prevent that from occurring, okay? With a continuous self-checking. So you have other control systems that will do a self-check, make sure all my systems are working properly, but it might be once a shift or so many hours or some timeline, okay? So I do all that. I put all of those new guarding methods in there, and I go back and I say, okay, now I have minor and a remote probability, and now I'm in that tolerable risk level, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, that is the risk assessment. Does that help? Now, the last thing I want to say about this is we've done the guarding, we've done all these wonderful things. What else is left to do? Thank you. So we need a procedure, right? We need to train people on the procedure, and then what else? The enforcement. Because if you're not enforcing your own policies and procedures, people take that as permission. So enforcement is indeed one of your resources. Bingo. Okay. All right. So again, you start with the risk assessment, then you do the estimation of the risk levels, and then you apply all these guarding methods based off of either the ANSI or the ISO. Perhaps something's in the OSHA standard that can help you. And then we'll find that we have a much better situation. We have a priority list, right? And we can stop throwing time, money, and effort at something and just hoping it will work. But now we have documentation. And that's why I call this my little do loop, right? Because just because we have it, we have procedures, we have the training, we have the enforcement, we're never done, right? We have to continuously look at this. Can we do better? All right, what kind of questions, thoughts, or concerns do you have? Just how quick can we get to the food? I agree.
I find this really interesting because I'm in the human side of the risk prevention, but it's the exact same principles.
It is.
You can train somebody, you can give them countermeasures, you can say, do this, don't do that. And then as soon as you turn around and walk away, they're back to doing it the exact same way that you just told them, don't do it. So unless you come back and do the retraining, we default.
I gotta get on my little preaching box. When somebody got hurt, because that's gonna happen, Did we do a proper incident investigation and get down to the actual root cause? Because if you're doing an actual true incident investigation and find the root cause, guess what that root cause is going to point at? Was the guarding appropriate? Well, how do you know it was appropriate? Where's your documentation that it was appropriate? You don't have it because you didn't do the assessment and you didn't follow up with all those others that we talked about. Awesome point. Thank you so much. Anything else?
A couple of things that I found helpful were when you had machinery that you felt was not properly guarded, to have that client contact the manufacturer and see what they had in the way of machinery guarding. And then also to have the client in their purchase orders say that by filling the respooling machine, you certify that it meets all federal, state, local.
Yeah, well, this is
Standards.
for client.
Yes.
Can't give too much
Well, I'm just
information,
using,
but that wasn't gonna happen. Let me just tell you that. The other thing is, I do hear that a lot of companies want to kind of take it back to the manufacturer. Well, it didn't come this way. Well, it probably did come with certain guards and safeguarding devices. You just didn't want to pay for that. Okay?
and you could buy those as, you know,
Yes.
contact them and say it does come.
That's right, which makes it more expensive, which is why nobody's purchasing that. It doesn't mean that because the manufacturer didn't put it on there, that you're off the hook, because you're not. You, the employer, are responsible for protecting your employees from what you put out there for them to work on. End of story. You very rarely do you have the opportunity to go back and say, manufacturer messed this up. Good point, but it does happen. Sometimes it is where a manufacturer can help you and say, oh yeah, we have the perfect solution.
Because if you design one yourself, and I know that's your business.
No, I don't do this, but.
Okay, well,
Signing regards, that's a. huge
Okay.
liability.
well, whoever's designing, you know, you're under the gun that if somebody does get subsequently hurt, that you didn't design it correctly, whereas the manufacturer, if they don't have the correct guarding, product liability comes into play, where your machinery caused bodily injury or property damage due to inadequate guarding. So I guess over the years, I found that to be the best approach, is to contact the manufacturer, see what they have to say about this.
Proactive about contacting the manufacturer. Unfortunately, what I see happen, you might have a different experience than me, is we're only worried about the manufacturer after we've hurt somebody. It's too late. Well, for that person, it's not too late for future occurrences. But I love it when companies are being proactive and looking at this before somebody gets hurt. And I do see that from time to time, but I often not see that after somebody got hurt.
Would also say, a lot of times when you buy, you know, speaking to yours, buy a piece of equipment and it's, you know, they're made for the general audience, basically. And you have a specific use for it. Before I was in safety, I did some quality work and, you know, we would validate systems for either the, you know, so it met FDA or whatever. And you'd contact, you know, instrument manufacturer or something and you say, you know, you know, will this meet these standards? And oh, yeah. But we were still responsible for performing the validation ourselves and proving that it did meet those standards. And I think the same applies in the safety realm, maybe in a different way, but we have to take it as we intend to use it. And from a quality standpoint, it's called, you know, there's the IQ, the installation qualification, but there's the performance qualification, and that's as intended to use. So we have to actually make sure if we're purchasing something and it has those guards or whatever the safety features, that those safety features are appropriate for our use, not just that in general. So
Right.
it's a trust but verify, and we're responsible for the verification part.
There's a lot of assumptions out there that just because they bought this piece of equipment, that all liability goes to them. Guys, it always goes back to the employer to protect your employees. And you're right. They can't make money if they're making it very specific for every customer. So they're making it overall for the general public. So a very good valid point.
And the point that I was gonna make totally separately was, don't assume that just because you write it down or put it in a training document, that they're gonna follow it. A real quick example, and it's not, has nothing to do with machine guarding, but we put out, updated manuals. I put out an updated manual. I run a high containment infectious disease lab. So I put out the new manual, and in the email instructions, highlighted. Told, when you sign that page saying that you read it, blah, 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 send it to, and I ask them to send it to my assistant. Highlighted in nice, bright, I don't use yellow because it seems too obnoxious, but nice, bright blue. Half of them that have come back so far, they've sent only to me. And it's right there in a short email. And I'm gonna use it as an example without calling actual individuals out. But if they can't follow that simple email, what's telling, what assurance do I have that they really know what's in that manual as well? So it's kind of,
Well, and again, we kind of glossed over it because of time and all, but how good is your training? Okay, so you just spent significant time and money, because if you put people onto this project to do the assessment and design the guard and all that, you've got a pretty good investment, and then you just kind of throw out a very quickie type of training on it. So the quality of the training makes a huge difference. Did you go out there and do you have documentation where they understood the quality of the training? Okay, so there's a lot of different ways you can verify that. Talk about quality control, quality control for training. But it also goes into the enforcement part. And one day I'm gonna design a presentation on how supervisors make or break a safety program. They are the backbone to safety culture of the plant. They're the ones that are supervising not just the process and the product and the equipment, but the people, and they tend to forget that. And that's where we're losing ground on the enforcement part. I gotta shut up about that because I'll start preaching. Awesome questions. Any others?
Thank you. ASSP chapter and some sections over the years. Probably should never got a mug, so we'd like to give you the covenant, say, covenant chapter mug. It's dishwasher safe and
Yeah, based on the volume, I think I can get like 10 or 12 ounces in it.
so you get a plenty of pop all
Yes,
day long.
thank you. I really am loving my.
Changing it this year, brand new year. I used to let you go get your mouth full of food, and then we did the pledge and prayer instead of letting your mouth be full. So let's do the pledge first and the prayer. And then we'll have break for food. And yeah, you can always have flash in the looking this way. You want to spend a pledge? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This one, prayer, Vincent.
Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for life and health and strength. We thank you for health, Lord, and taking care of our bodies and keeping us ready to do things that we need to do. We thank you for blessing us and blessing the people that we work for and helping us to learn from what we see today so that we can prevent injuries and keep people going home safely. Thank you for watching over us all as we leave this place as well. We thank you for blessing the food that we're about to receive for the nourishment of our bodies. In Christ Jesus our Lord's name, amen.
Get yourself, hey, change of pace, Taco Mama today versus Jason's Deli or some other deli. So.
Yes, they said I'm Jason, but
the dog.
yeah. Like we told everybody, healthy.
Welcome to our first meeting of,
Well, Avoided all.
Yes, that,
I've been in before, but so that's his name. Update him.
Want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Robert Trimble, works for the company, internal audit. You know, my team performs environmental health safety audits all across the other. Excited to be here.
Yes, that means more money. Anybody have any? Go ahead.
I think I'm a new member.
Okay.
I went to the conference in Denver. And I think it came with a membership. I may be a guest. But shortly after that, I started getting all the emails. I think I'm a member. I think I'm a member.
Hey, do you have any announcements that like to announce at all?
You have mine rolled in there.
Did you pay the money? I'm just joking. I'm just joking.
Any safety shares? I mean, we have. All heard some regarding issues out there. Anybody have anything? Okay, there are training institutes out there, there's a training institute at UA Safe State, Deep South Center for Occupational Safety and Health also has some training. Go to the websites, a couple interesting virtual classes coming up at the UA OSHA site. Electrical safety in February and self-care construction, maritime and general industry also in February. UAB has nothing in February listed, I think they have something better coming up in March. And some of the training opportunities coming up, Central Construction Conference is gonna be March 20th. At the Hyundai Training Center. It's free.
Yeah, I'm waiting on it to come out, because there'd be no travel.
You can call
You can call,
right now.
okay, so you can call in to register, but registration will be up probably early next month,
Early next week, I hope.
early next week, okay, possibly end of this month,
But I
registration.
don't want that to stop people. They want to be on the, I know lots of people like to just know that they've checked that box. So just give Laura a call.
Okay, yep, and it's free, so what better chance do you have to go to a pre-conference than this one? And it's an all-day conference, starts about 7 and it's about 3. And they give out wonderful door prizes too, a lot of Yeti stuff. AETC is gonna be doing a couple interesting half day, full day classes here. One's with a hardwood grant on February 17th, 18th, and it's fall fashion. Another interesting one is AGC is gonna have RiskCon. It's a job site and administrative risk crisis management conference, which includes some cybersecurity risk, and it said that it's both company and personal, which might be interesting. One of these is free. I think it's the Harvard grant. The other one's minimal cost. April 11th, OSHA record keeping over ADC and ASSP will be part of that. This may be our hopeful PDC half day event. We'll put out a PDC for 0.3.4 credits, CEU credits. This is the event that UAB is working on. They're gonna do a Southeast Regional Symposium, San Juan, Puerto Rico, March 5th through the 7th. There's actually some other days in there for other events. So it looks like it's all week event, and we start things down there. Check our website, the announcements on our website now, it's posted. You can go to UAB's Deep South Center for Occupational Safety and Health, and see the flyer there as well. Some chapter updates. Next month, we won't be meeting here. We're on February 21st, we're going to be at Jacksonville State University, meeting with the student section there. Merrill Building, which is room 300. You drive up the main state route there, the building's on the right side, across from the main campus. Fire issues and explosive outcomes by Dr. Chris Schimmel from UA Safety. He's the director. I told him to make an explosive presentation, so hopefully he will. March 28th, we're gonna have Dr. Georgia Rose. She's gonna do audiometric custom active and passive protections presentation here at the AGC location. April 11th, I think we're gonna be at the ABC location for the record keeping. We may have another meeting between now. May 16th is gonna be a member recognition luncheon. We had a great luncheon last year in April, this year we're doing in May. There'll also be an announcement for the chapter safety professional of the year. We also do a couple awards. Susan Collins was our representative here at AGC for years. She got us this room for free. She set it up for us. She retired in December without ever telling us. So I'd like to send her a card, maybe a gift card in it. Say, hey, thank you for all the years you've allowed us to use AGC. Then June 20th, the new executive will take over, here at the AGC location. Sections are gonna have a meeting coming up, Auburn, Black and Montgomery, February 20th. Presentation is on, chemical inventory update by, Michael Raspberry from UA Safe State. You know where Northern Boulevard is, and it hits 82. There's a community college on the south side of the road. That's where they're meeting at the Howard Training Center. The actual location for ATN and the training room is in the back side of the campus. And then the Tuscaloosa, West Alabama section will be on February 14th. It's at the Tuscaloosa Innovation and Discovery Center. Presentation due to determine has quite been determining what it's going to be. They're working on it still.
Well, what section are we in?
Elections.
We're just
Anybody
Alabama.
wants to-
Oh, okay.
If anybody wants to join the executive committee, we're looking for a program, membership, government affairs, program chair, which have been filled for years. I got Paul Thurrow, I've heard him on once, I got one email, so I would contact Ray. He's Alabama and Mississippi Regional Treasurer for ASSP, so contact him if you're interested in joining our executive committee. Sections will have elections through the sections, Tuscaloosa, West Alabama, and Auburn, Opelika, and Montgomery are due this year. Check with their chairs, the House, or in the Auburn, Opelika, Montgomery, it's Tina Arthur Peterworth now. Is the chairman down there, or chairperson. And our next meeting obviously is gonna be JSU campus. On February 21st.
Hey, Tom, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hey,
sir.
Yeah, it's Matthew. Just on your slide, you had Merrill Hall. A lot of people will type in, Merrill Hall on their Google, and it'll bring up Merrill Hall. There is a Merrill Hall, and there's a Hugh Merrill Hall. HUGH Merrill Hall is the one you want to go to. That's the actual where all the safety stuff is at. So if you just said, "Oh, Merrill Hall," you would actually go to the wrong building. So Hugh Merrill Hall is the correct one. That's on the main drag.
Okay, how did off the email I got from Mr. Yarborough down there, so I'll for the Merrill Hall as the actual building at the campus, and
Yep.
we'll put that in the location address for y'all to get to prior to the meeting. Anybody else have any comments, questions? Enjoy your lunch. Thanks for attending. For those on the executive committees for the sections and the chapter, we'll meet probably in 15 minutes. Okay. Thanks. Good luck.